The desperate called the crystal towers of New Zephyria burned against the purple sky as Ambassador Lyra Voss ran through the collapsing corridors of the Galactic Communications Center. Her silver hair whipped behind her as explosions rocked the building, each blast bringing the Korath Empire's ground forces closer to the heart of Zephyrian civilization. The elegant spires that had stood for 1,000 years were crumbling under the weight of orbital bombardment. Their beautiful crystalline structure, no match for the raw destructive power of the Korath. War Machine Lyra's pale blue skin was streaked with dust and tears as she reached the emergency broadcast station. Behind her, the screams of her people echoed through the halls. The Zephyrians had never known war like this. For 3 millennia, they had built their society on trade, diplomacy, and the peaceful exchange of knowledge. Their greatest weapons were words, their strongest defenses were treaties. Now, those treaties lay in ruins alongside their cities, and their words had failed to stop the monsters at their gates. The Korath Empire had swept through the outer colonies like a plague of locusts, consuming everything in their path. 12 peaceful worlds had already fallen, their populations either enslaved or eliminated, depending on their usefulness to the Korath resource machine. The survivors spoke of horrors beyond imagination, entire cities melted by fusion weapons, children taken for genetic experiments, ancient libraries burned for the simple joy of destruction. The Korath did not conquer to expand their territory or spread their culture. They conquered because they could, and they destroyed because they enjoyed it. With trembling hands, Lyra activated the quantum communication array that connected their world to every known civilization in the galaxy. The massive device hummed to life, its crystalline components resonating with harmonic frequencies that could reach across the void faster than light itself. This was their last hope, a desperate plea to anyone who might still believe that innocent people deserved protection from extinction. This is Ambassador Lyra Voss of the Zephyrian Federation. Transmitting on all emergency frequencies, she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Our civilization faces complete annihilation at the hands of the Korath Empire. We are a peaceful people with no military force capable of defending against their advanced war technology. In the past 72 hours, the Korath have destroyed our outer defense platforms and taken control of 8 of our colony worlds. The building shook as another wave of orbital strikes hammered the capital city. Through the reinforced windows, Lyra could see the elegant floating gardens of her youth falling like broken dreams into the streets below. The Korath dropships were landing in the central plaza, disgorging their black-armored soldiers like a metal tide of death. Each warrior stood 3 meters tall, their cybernetic enhancements glowing red in the smoky darkness. The Korath military doctrine appears to be total elimination of all existing life forms on planets they cannot immediately use for resource extraction. Lyra continued, her professional composure cracking as she thought of the millions already dead. Our intelligence estimates suggest that over 4 billion Zephyrian civilians have been killed in their systematic destruction of our outer territories. They show no interest in negotiation, surrender, or any form of peaceful resolution. She paused to wipe the tears from her eyes, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, civilizations were receiving this message and making calculations about the cost of helping versus the safety of staying away. The Zephyrians had always believed that goodness existed in the universe, that beings of different species could find common ground in their shared desire for peace and prosperity. Now that faith was being tested in the most brutal way possible, we offer our complete technological database to any species willing to provide immediate military assistance. Lyra broadcast, her voice growing stronger with desperate hope. This includes our quantum communication systems, our advanced medical knowledge, our gravitational manipulation technology, and our detailed star charts of this entire galactic sector. We also offer permanent trade agreements, exclusive access to our established shipping routes, and formal alliance treaties with any civilization that shares our values of peace and cooperation. The responses began coming in almost immediately, but each one crushed her hopes a little more. The Altarian Republic declared they were too far away to provide timely assistance. The Centauri Alliance demanded exclusive rights to 5 Zephyrian star systems in exchange for limited defensive support. The Vegan Merchant Consortium offered to evacuate some civilians for an enormous fee, but would not engage Korath forces directly. Every civilization had the same response. Either the distance was too great, the price too high, or the military commitment too dangerous. Please understand that we are not asking for conquest or territorial expansion, Lyra pleaded, her professional mask finally slipping away to reveal the terrified woman beneath. We simply want to survive as a people. The Korath Empire has made it clear through their actions that they intend to strip our worlds of all useful resources after eliminating every trace of our civilization. This is not a political dispute or a territorial conflict. This is genocide on a galactic scale. The communication array detected another incoming signal. This one from the Hegemony Council, the closest thing the galaxy had to a unified government. Lyra's heart raced as she opened the channel, praying that finally someone with real power would offer help. Instead, she found herself facing the cold, insectoid features of Councillor Thrix, whose species had survived by never taking sides in galactic conflicts. Ambassador Voss, Thrix's voice buzzed through the translator. The Hegemony Council has reviewed your request for military assistance. While we sympathize with your people's situation, we cannot authorize military intervention against the Korath Empire. Such action would destabilize the current balance of power and potentially trigger larger conflicts throughout the sector. Lyra stared at the screen in disbelief. Counselor, they are committing genocide. 4 billion people are already dead, and the remainder of our population will be eliminated within days. How can the Council speak of balance when an entire civilization is being erased from existence? The Korath Empire is a recognized sovereign power with legitimate territorial claims, Thrix replied coldly. The Council cannot set the precedent of military intervention in internal disputes. We suggest you attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution through established diplomatic channels. The transmission ended, leaving Lyra alone with the sound of approaching weapons fire. The Korath soldiers had breached the lower levels of the building, and her security team was fighting a desperate delaying action to give her more time. She could hear the distinctive whine of plasma weapons and the screams of defenders, dying to protect their world's last hope of survival with growing desperation. Lyra boosted the transmitter's power to maximum and broadcast her plea again, this time on every frequency known to Zephyrian science. Somewhere in the vast galaxy, someone had to care enough to help. Someone had to believe that innocent people deserved protection from monsters. This is Ambassador Lyra Voss making a final emergency broadcast to all civilized species, she said, her voice echoing across the void to touch every corner of known space. The Korath Empire will complete their occupation of our territory within hours. After that, they will likely expand toward other peaceful civilizations. Any species that values life over profit should consider this a direct threat to their own security. The weapons fire was getting closer. Lyra could smell the acrid smoke of burning electronics and the metallic scent of spilled blood. Her security team was down to their last few defenders, buying her precious minutes with their lives. She thought of the children in the evacuation shelters, the artists and teachers and engineers who had dedicated their lives to building rather than destroying. None of them deserved to die because they had chosen peace over violence. We have doctors who have never seen a weapon, she continued, her voice breaking with emotion. We have children who think war is something that happens in history books. We have elders who remember when the galaxy was a place where different species could meet as friends rather than enemies. If there is anyone listening who still believes that civilization is worth preserving, please respond. We will give you everything we have built over 3,000 years in exchange for the chance to rebuild somewhere safe. Just as Korith soldiers blasted through the communication center's armored doors, their red eyes glowing with predatory hunger, an unexpected response crackled through the quantum array. The signal was weak and came from a distant system marked simply as Terra Prime in their stellar databases. The voice that emerged was unlike anything in the Zephyrian linguistic database. Rough, aggressive, and strangely confident. Asterisk. Zephyrian vessel, this is Terra Prime Control responding to your distress call. We have received your coordinates and tactical data. Military assistance is being dispatched immediately. Estimated arrival time is 14 hours. Maintain defensive positions where possible. Help is coming. Lyra stared at the communication display in shock. The signal quality suggested the transmission had come from an enormous distance, yet somehow reached them faster than should have been possible with known technology. She had never heard of humans before, and 14 hours seemed impossible for any known species to cross the vast distances between star systems. The lead Korith soldier stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over her delicate form. His cybernetic implants glowed brighter as he spoke in the harsh, guttural language of his people. The universal translator rendered his words into her native tongue. Surrender, little diplomat. Your pathetic calls for help will bring only more death to this galaxy. But Lyra smiled through her tears as she looked at the display still showing the mysterious signal from Terra Prime. You don't understand, she whispered. I think we just called the wrong kind of help. Light years away, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the blue-green world of New Zephyria appear on the main display. His ship was part of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, humanity's first major military deployment beyond their home system. The journey had taken 14 hours exactly as promised, not because of superior engine technology, but because the Retribution had been stationed at a forward observation post when the Zephyrian distress call reached Earth. Morrison was a veteran of the Martian colonial wars, where humanity had learned the hard lessons of interplanetary warfare. His dark eyes held the weight of countless battles, and his scarred hands had pulled the trigger on weapons that could crack moons. Behind him, his crew of 300 volunteers represented the best soldiers Earth could provide. Warriors who had been forged in the fires of humanity's most brutal conflicts. Captain, we're receiving multiple hails from the planet's surface, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Chen. They seem ... very excited about our arrival. Morrison nodded and activated the main viewer. The face of a blue-skinned humanoid appeared on screen, her golden eyes wide with desperate hope. This was clearly Ambassador Lyra from the Distress. Transmission, and Morrison could see she had been through hell. Her clothes were torn, her skin was smudged with ash, and there was a haunted look in her eyes that he recognized from his own mirror. Unknown vessel, this is Ambassador Lyra Voss of the Zephyrian Federation, she said, her voice trembling with exhaustion and relief. "We cannot express our gratitude for your swift response to our call for assistance. We have prepared a formal diplomatic reception to honor your arrival and discuss terms for military cooperation." Morrison studied the alien's face carefully. The psychological profiles prepared by Earth's xenobiology team had described the Zephyrians as peaceful traders, who resolved conflicts through negotiation and compromise. They had no experience with species that preferred direct action over lengthy discussions, and their idea of military assistance probably involved defensive strategies rather than offensive operations. "Ambassador Voss, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Expeditionary Force," he replied, his voice carrying the hard edge of a man who had seen too much war. "We appreciate your hospitality, but we don't have time for ceremonies. I need detailed tactical information about current Korith positions, their command structure, and the location of your remaining civilian populations. We also need to know about their fleet composition and any intelligence on their military doctrine." The ambassador's expression showed confusion at Morrison's blunt response. Behind her, other Zephyrian officials whispered among themselves with obvious concern. It was clear they had expected a different kind of help, perhaps a few defensive ships to help them negotiate a ceasefire, or maybe some advanced technology to level the playing field. They had not expected humanity's version of military assistance. "Captain Morrison," Lyra said carefully, "we had hoped to begin with formal diplomatic protocols and discussion of terms for any military support. Our government has prepared compensation packages and mutual defense agreements for any species willing to provide assistance against the Korith Empire." Morrison felt his jaw tighten with impatience. These people were facing extinction, and they wanted to hold committee meetings about compensation packages. Every minute wasted in diplomatic pleasantries meant more civilian casualties and stronger Korith positions. The enemy was not going to wait for them to finish their paperwork. "Ambassador, with respect, we're not here to negotiate terms or provide defensive support," Morrison said, his voice growing colder. "We're here to eliminate the Korith threat permanently. The only way to save your people is to destroy their ability to continue these genocidal operations. I need that tactical data immediately." The bridge of the Retribution fell silent as the crew watched their captains exchange with the aliens. Everyone understood that first contact with a new species should involve careful diplomatic considerations, but they also understood that diplomacy was a luxury they could not afford when millions of lives hung in the balance. The ambassador's golden eyes widened with something that might have been fear. "Captain, your response is concerning to our leadership. When we requested military assistance, we assumed any intervention would focus on protecting our remaining worlds rather than aggressive action against Korith forces. We have always resolved conflicts through peaceful means." Morrison activated a tactical display showing the current situation in Zephyrian space. Red indicators marked Korith fleet positions, while blue dots showed remaining civilian populations. The enemy had complete orbital supremacy around 8 worlds and was approaching for more. The tactical situation was hopeless for any defensive strategy. "Ambassador, look at your situation," Morrison said, his voice softening slightly as he recognized the genuine confusion in her eyes. "The Korith have overwhelming numerical superiority and complete mobility advantage. Any defensive strategy will only delay your extinction by days or weeks. The only viable solution is to destroy their command structure and eliminate their ability to coordinate offensive operations." Behind the ambassador, Zephyrian officials spoke in urgent whispers while pointing at the tactical displays. Their body language suggested growing alarm at human intentions rather than relief at receiving help. Morrison realized these people fundamentally misunderstood both the nature of their enemy and the type of assistance they had requested. "Captain Morrison," Lyra said slowly, "we appreciate your analysis, but the Zephyrian Federation has always believed that conflicts can be resolved through negotiation and compromise. We were hoping for assistance in establishing a ceasefire or creating protected zones for civilian evacuation. Perhaps your people could serve as mediators in peace talks with the Korith leadership." Morrison stared at the screen for a long moment, realizing that these aliens had no concept of what they were truly facing. The Korith Empire was not a civilization that negotiated with species they considered inferior. They were a military machine designed for conquest and resource extraction, and they would continue killing until someone stopped them permanently. "Ambassador," he said finally, "the Korith military doctrine is based on complete elimination of existing populations followed by total resource extraction. They don't negotiate with inferior species, and they don't recognize civilian non-combatant status. They will continue killing your people until every last Zephorian is dead. Peace talks are not an option." The tactical display updated with new information as Morrison's intelligence officers processed the data from Zephyrian sources. The Korith fleet was massive, over 200 vessels, including several Fortress-class command ships. Their ground forces had already begun the systematic extermination of civilian populations on conquered worlds. This was not a war of conquest, but a campaign of annihilation. Our intelligence indicates that Korith forces will complete their occupation of your remaining worlds within 72 hours unless their command structure is disrupted," Morrison continued. "This requires direct assault on their mobile fortress platforms and elimination of their fleet commanders. There is no other option." Ambassador Lyra studied the human intelligence reports with growing horror. The level of detail suggested that humans had been observing Korith operations for an extended period, which raised uncomfortable questions about why they had not intervened sooner. "Captain Morrison," she said quietly, "this intelligence is remarkably comprehensive. How long have your people been aware of Korith expansion activities? And why did you not offer assistance to other species facing similar threats?" Morrison had expected this question, but the honest answer would probably terrify the Zephyrians even more than their current circumstances. Humanity had been tracking Korith movements because they represented exactly the type of challenge that Earth's military forces had been hoping to encounter. The Terran Expeditionary Force was not a rescue organization. It was a weapon of war, looking for a target worthy of its capabilities. "We have monitored Korith activities for approximately 2 years," Morrison replied carefully. "Previous civilizations either did not request assistance or were conquered before we could respond effectively. Your distress call provided clear coordinates and tactical data that allowed us to plan appropriate intervention." The ambassador's expression suggested she understood. There was more to the story, but decided not to pursue the question further. Her people needed help, regardless of human motivations for providing it. The important thing was that someone had finally answered their call, even if that someone was more dangerous than she had expected. "Captain, what specific type of intervention do you propose?" Lyra asked. "Our remaining defensive forces are minimal, and our civilian population has no experience with military operations. We cannot provide significant support for any combat operations." Morrison activated a strategic display showing projected battle plans that made the peaceful Zephyrians visibly uncomfortable. The human approach involves simultaneous strikes against multiple Korath positions, using tactics that seemed designed to maximize psychological impact rather than simply achieve military objectives. We will target their mobile command platforms. First, to disrupt coordination between fleet elements, Morrison explained. Secondary objectives include their resource processing facilities and supply depot stations. Tertiary targets are individual warships attempting to retreat or regroup. Our goal is complete elimination of their ability to continue operations in this sector. The tactical presentation showed human vessels pursuing damaged Korath ships across multiple star systems rather than allowing them to escape. Other scenarios depicted boarding actions designed to capture enemy vessels and extract intelligence through methods that the Zephyrians clearly found disturbing. "Captain," Lyra said slowly, "your battle plans seem extremely ... aggressive. Are you certain this level of violence is necessary? Perhaps a demonstration of superior technology might convince Korath commanders to withdraw voluntarily." Morrison realized that the Zephyrians still believed warfare was primarily about displays of strength, rather than the application of overwhelming force. They thought enemies could be convinced to stop fighting through impressive demonstrations, rather than complete defeat. This fundamental misunderstanding of human nature was about to collide with the harsh reality of what his people called Deathworlder fury. Ambassador Morrison said quietly, "The Korath Empire has conquered 47 star systems over the past 50 years. They have never retreated voluntarily, and they have never negotiated with species they consider inferior. Demonstrations of technology will only prompt them to call for reinforcements from their core worlds. The only language they understand is overwhelming force applied without mercy." The bridge communication system activated, and Lieutenant Chen reported multiple contacts approaching the outer system boundary. The enemy had detected human arrival and was moving to intercept before the Terran fleet could establish orbital supremacy around the Zephyrian homeworld. "Captain, we have confirmed contact with 18 Korath heavy cruisers and 2 Fortress-class command vessels," Chen announced. "They are broadcasting surrender demands to all ships in the system and threatening to accelerate their ground operations if we do not withdraw immediately." Morrison smiled grimly as he watched enemy formations on the tactical display. The Korath were approaching exactly as human intelligence had predicted, in tight formation, relying on superior numbers and firepower to intimidate their opponents into submission. They expected quick victory against technologically inferior forces that would panic under pressure. Ambassador Morrison said, turning back to the communication channel, "You are about to see why humans are classified as Deathworlders in the galactic database. All Zephyrian vessels should maintain safe distance from the combat zone. What you are about to witness may be disturbing to your people." As the Retribution moved toward the approaching Korath fleet, Lyra finally understood what her desperate call for help had actually summoned to their peaceful corner of the galaxy. They had asked for assistance, but they had received something far more dangerous: the fury of a species that had learned to fight by nearly destroying itself, and had emerged from that crucible stronger, harder, and more dangerous than any civilization in the galaxy could imagine. The war for Zephyrian survival was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn why no one called humanity for help unless they were prepared to deal with the consequences. Deathworlder unleashed war. Commander Thane Korath stood in the command center of his massive dreadnought, Bone Crusher, and studied the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. His fleet of 200 vessels had conquered 47 star systems without a single defeat. and these pathetic Zephyrians would soon become number 48. The Korith Empire had built its power on simple principles that had proven successful. Across 5 decades of expansion, overwhelming force applied swiftly broke enemy resistance. Terror tactics prevented civilian populations from organizing effective resistance, and complete resource extraction maximized the value of each conquest. The Korith themselves were a species forged in the fires of a dying world. Their home planet had been stripped of resources by ancient wars, leaving them with a simple choice: expand or die. They had chosen expansion, and their military doctrine reflected the desperation of a people who viewed the galaxy as a zero-sum game where only the strongest survived. Every world they conquered was another step away from extinction. Every population they eliminated was one less potential threat to their future. War Commander, his intelligence officer, reported, "We are detecting unknown vessels in the inner system near the primary colony world. Initial scans suggest approximately 20 ships of unknown configuration approaching our forward elements." Thane examined the sensor data with mild interest. Desperate civilizations often called for help from distant allies when facing Korith conquest. These allies usually provided token resistance before withdrawing when they realized the futility of opposing superior force. The pattern was always the same. A few ships would arrive, engage briefly with Korith scouts, and then retreat to their home systems after filing formal protests with whatever galactic authority they recognized. "What species identification do we have on these unknown vessels?" Thane asked, his cybernetic eye glowing brighter as he processed the tactical information. "And what is their estimated military capability compared to our forward elements?" The intelligence officer manipulated the tactical display to show detailed scans of the mysterious ships. Their design was unlike anything in the Korith database of known civilizations, but their size suggested they posed no serious threat to Korith's superiority. The largest vessels were barely half the size of a Korith heavy cruiser, and their energy signatures indicated conventional fusion drives rather than the advanced antimatter systems used by major galactic powers. "Species identification shows as human from a system designated Terra Prime," the officer reported. "No previous contact recorded in our intelligence files. Estimated military capability appears minimal based on vessel size and energy output. Recommend standard intimidation protocols followed by demonstration of superior firepower." Thane nodded and activated the fleet communication system. His voice carried the authority of a commander who had never known defeat, backed by the firepower of the largest mobile war fleet in the galaxy. The humans would learn the same lesson that 47 other species had learned. Resistance to the Korith Empire was not just futile, it was suicidal. "Unknown vessels, this is War Commander Thane Korith of the Korith Empire," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You have entered a restricted military zone during active conquest operations. You will withdraw immediately to a minimum distance of 10 light years, or you will be destroyed. This is your only warning."